Yeah, so welcome to another episode of Fluently Salesforce. Today we're going to talk about data quality, but let's first do introductions. I'll start. I'm Andre, Salesforce consultant for the last 9 years, and love everything about the data quality, user adoption, and change management. And who's next, Ines?
Thank you. I'm Ines Garcia. I'm a Salesforce MVP, and I've been doing a dual work of Agile and all things Salesforce for over a decade. Jodie, would you like to go next?
Thanks. I'm Jodie Miners, and I'm a Salesforce consultant from Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia. And I am really interested to talk about this topic tonight. And it's night here, so please excuse the lighting. And over to Anna.
Kia ora, I'm Anna Loughnan, all the way from Wellington, New Zealand. So I'm also a Salesforce MVP. I've been involved with the Salesforce ecosystem now for about 14 years, and I'm a pretty new independent Salesforce consultant.
Well, I pick it next. Daniel Stange is based north of Frankfurt in Germany. A Salesforce technical architect and CTO with my company for 8 years now. And I'm on the receiving end of data quality because I do a lot of analytics stuff. So everything that is crappy at the beginning is bad for me. So I'm super stoked to hear Andrew's takes, and I'll pass it on to Szandor.
Hello, my name is Szandor Knapp. I'm a developer slash evangelist slash Salesforce nerd based in Munich, Germany. I work for DIA, Die Interaktiven. So since recently, Daniel over there is my boss. And I'm really looking forward to this talk to maybe get an answer to the question, how much manual data entry is still a thing in 2022?
Well, a lot, if you ask me. But, it's never enough. No, but in the data quality, and I also wrote down a bit of a statement to maybe start together with what you just said. We're not spending enough time on data quality, like both input processing and output, and what's the result of this. And I actually think that's probably because a lot of people and companies don't know why it would actually be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So a few notes here to start with, but of course it's only a few scribbles. Let's not make it too structured. But Szandor, what you just said about the manual input, there's probably a story behind that.
There is, but okay. So excuse me for taking a little bit longer. At the end of the day, to me, the current we're on the threshold between conversational stuff happening and the rigid form of data entry we get with record forms, for example. And I find it harder and harder to convince and train people that a rigid data entry is necessary, whereas my personal phone can basically predict 90% of the sentences I want to type. And still, I believe manual data entry is a necessity and a given. The question is just, can I sell it? Or is it basically the worst part of working with Salesforce currently, or any CRM? It's not Salesforce specific. It's really about conversational, unstructured data, the way how we talk, how we interact versus tables of data. And that's the story behind it.
And that's very much an interesting break point, because when you come from an analytical viewpoint, and that was my pitch in the beginning, unstructured data is your worst enemy. So people bring you a mess of conversation logs, like the notorious visit reports of German companies, where they write an essay on what they did with the customers, and then they say, please bring me that AI. and I say, yeah, what is the data that I can train algorithms on? And they bring these kind of epic pages that they wrote on Friday morning, because Friday is their office day when they write all these reports, and it's completely useless. On the other hand, I understand your point that conversational data is going to be an important thing, and for me, I as a person cannot currently bridge these both ends of the valley, where on the one end is unstructured conversational data, and on the other hand is my approach to find meaning in data. And the less structure it has, the more interpretation, the more guesswork comes into what I try to build with that. But I don't want to dig too deep. We're probably straying already way wide from the course.
That's the old adage of qualitative versus quantitative analysis.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we are moving more towards unstructured data. And we just had this conversation this week regard whether you should use tasks or a structured object to record meeting notes. And then I said, well, what about Slack? Yeah, I'd use Chatter, but then Chatter can't be reported on because they haven't built it right. And Slack, I don't even know whether you could even remotely get any reporting out of Slack. But my question was, why are you reporting on it? That's that's the whole other discussion. But that's not about how you get the data in. But we've got so many, as with usual with Salesforce, we've got so many ways to do things. So has anyone got any ideas and any thoughts around like how do we enter like data for like meeting notes or conversational notes for customers? I will not use notes, Salesforce notes. I will not use it. It just is banned. I do not even put it on a page layout. So has anyone got any thoughts about how you get that sort of data in?
A couple of things that comes to mind. One is that I like to clarify the mention that we've done about AI. Artificial intelligence is none of these two things. It's not artificial and it's not intelligence. Okay, so you have humans making rules behind it on big data volumes. That's all that it is, right? So there ain't a magic wizard that's gonna come and save you here. Exactly. Now, how I like to tackle this, and I'm doing this project, it's sort of a bit of a secret startup situation, but basically we have the ability to bring tons and tons of data from unstructured documents, right? Now, I tend to ask, what do we, as Jodie was saying, what do we gonna use this for? And how much of this actually is of value? Right? And it came that conversations to 2 data points out of myriads of hundreds of potential pages of thousands of potential responses of documents. So there is a lot of unstructured data and it will continue growing, but maybe we don't care, right? Or what we care? Do we care about aggregates? There are a lot of things that you can look at. And so when, for example, meeting notes and things like that, one thing is that you may reference by a human. Potentially you want to aggregate things that come up often. So there are ways to handle that, but you don't have to consume it all, and not everything needs to be structured.
And what were the 2 things that came out that were important to?
2 data attributes. So you could fetch the data attributes and only process that. It's not only good because you don't overwhelm the system. You don't have to do too much post-processing. But also the reduction of the potential energy consumption, which I'm obviously very biased on that subject. We can talk about those sort of things another day. It matters, right?
Well, let me pick this up, Ines, because I think that's a very important thing. Andre said it's a scary topic. Yes, it is, because lots of companies feel a kind of total loss of control or overview. And my take on this, my opinion is that they simply overdo it by all the data points they pretend to collect. Technically, they don't. If you have 100 or 200 fields, it's completely unmanageable how to fill these fields. Well, yes, you can put validation rules out on it until you hit limits or what, but it doesn't help actually, because people will then start to fill bogus information in there to bypass the validation rules. I come from a background in journalism, and in print we have the concept of above the fold, which basically means if you have a newspaper, it's folded up to when it reaches the newsstand, and the most important information has to be on the upper half of the first page of the newspaper, so that it's visible when it's folded. And I try to keep this for usable record pages or usable layouts in Salesforce as well. You shouldn't have to be scroll, and you shouldn't have to search for a field, but all the information that you need should fit and will fit. If you focus, like Ines said, I never saw it that radical way that it boils down to two fields. But on the other hand, it should boil down to 20, probably 30 fields that are really relevant in a process, even for such a thing as an opportunity or so. So
I have an object with 500 fields on it. And,
yeah, I do have as well.
Yeah.
I have some with 700 where they had the limits lifted in previous days.
Yeah.
I do have these, and it's crap. It's just unhandleable.
Yeah.
And that is scary. That's what companies should be scared about.
And this one, the biggest subject, is one that has a lot of contract documents based off it, where you've got to have a field with lots of numeric values to work out a contract value, and it's not an opportunity. Szandor, jump in there, please.
Let me circle back to the fact that basically we're in a human-computer situation.
Mm-hmm.
So if we leave there are huge heaps and amounts of data, and how do we integrate them with Salesforce or not integrate them with Salesforce? If we leave that away for now, because we found there's no simple solution to conversational data versus structured data. And we also know we have decades of experience with structured data by now. When talking about structured data and talking about structured data in Salesforce, we always talk about there's a human that sits in front of a tablet, a phone, a computer, and needs to do something in order for the data to be created. So you get my gist. I'm coming now with the user experience thingy. Obviously, you can report on your data quality, you can make validation rules, but what makes it for a user easy to enter data so that they don't get frustrated during the process? I heard not too many fields. Okay, but what other best practices are there to engage people into thinking about data and entering it?
I had a good example for that. I had a customer who where the data or the team responsible for the data quality, which was also the administrator team, asked their boss to sponsor a party for the team that had the biggest improvement in data quality. Andre's points of having running reports and making it a routine comes in here. They developed a data quality score, and they actually had a barbecue party for the team that had the most improvement over 2 months or so, which was a huge success. It started slow, but in the end, everybody was racing towards that barbecue party, and in the end, everybody was invited for the barbecue party anyway. So, but that was it was more on the social ends, and the strategy actually worked when you came to a point where you had metrics, constant reporting, and constant ways to talk about these. But I'm happy to hear your ideas, and I just see data steward. Does anybody of you in the group have such a thing? I know these rules, these positions from the certification knowledge, where they say, yeah, there's some governance person and an org steward and a data steward and whatever. And to my scenarios, it often boils down to the same person. So I never met such a person. I would be interested to hear how that works. It's you. Yeah. The one person, that's me, exactly. That's my reality. So if any one of you has met such a person or such a circle and can tell me what they are doing, how they work.
I don't work in that sort of organization where there's such a thing. There's just me. Maybe Anna has some more insight into that from large organizations.
Well, I did want to share a story at a former company that I was at, not to do with actually being a data steward, but we had our customers would log highly technical cases with us, and I hasten to add it was something I inherited, and so there was effectively like one case record type, and dozens of validation rules, which drove everybody nuts. So they'd end up being NA or full stop and so many things just so they could get the darn thing submitted, and loads of questions, loads and loads of drop downs, and everybody hated filling that out. So what we ended up doing was now, and I can't remember the number of fields we got it down to, but literally it was just a small handful, and we made it conversational. It's like, tell us what the issue is. And they learned very quickly that if they wanted their issue dealt with quickly, they needed to describe it, in as few words as possible, but enough for the technicians to be able to pick up. I mean, there was still a couple of drop downs, but it just absolutely made the world of difference. It was the same group of users entering data over and over, logging cases over and over again. So they learned, that if the customer care team couldn't, derive from what they'd written what they wanted, it was going to take longer to resolve their case. So so there was a move to conversational in that case, but with purpose behind it.
Nice features that are very rarely used in Salesforce because they're not well set up enough, which is quick text. So you can use quick text in creating cases and creating case comments, but you can't use quick text in a lot of other places. So quick text is snippets of text that you can just save inside of Salesforce and then re-put it into different fields. So when you're doing things in a bit more repetitive way, using quick text is a really lovely feature, but it's just not available everywhere. And then macros is another one of doing just a bit more repetitive tasks over and over and over again. But again, very, very, very limited as to how it works okay with cases, but very limited in every other scenario. But if we're repeating the same data over and over and over again, what's the point? Can we clone a record? Can we do something to make it easier for people? That's a really hard question.
Andre has put up the consistency of the manipulations, which gave me the thought that if you use actions, I saw that record action deployments could be a thing where you have a kind of selection of actions to run on that record. So it could technically take over kind of the role of a quick text where you simply set fields by an action that you could deploy there and have offer a selection like classify this case as a whatever and push it to the next department. That could be something like an action that goes into that actions and recommendations box where you could select what you want to do next.
Has anyone ever used actions and recommendations for real? Actually using it in a real life scenario?
That was the kind of question that was behind it. Did anyone of you use record action deployments actually to bring this kind of because that could be Andre said wrote down you should have a consistent way to edit things. So what could that be? That was my next thought, and then I remembered record action deployment, and I never used them.
It requires you to write flows, and because the flows forms, the action related actions, you have to write a flow, and then you have to create a record for that record for the actions that appear on the page. So it's like double the records, and it's like a lot of extra work because you've got to create a flow for every single interaction you want people to do. And I just don't have the time nor ability to spend clients' money in that way to recreate the data that they're entering that's on a form that's already there on a Salesforce standard record into a flow for every single interaction that a rep has with a record. and the new flow forms where you can put the fields on the flow just do not work. Absolutely, bottom line, just do not work. So the only way that I can shortcut that, and dynamic forms, I'm trying to give them another go, and I'm not going to get into why they don't work right here and now. I'm trying to give them another go. But the main way I do it now is with quick actions. And related record components on a page. So I'll split up just a little bit that they need to focus on right now, and split that up and put that in a related record component on the page to say, based on the stage, make that related record component visible. And that's got the 3 fields they need to focus on this stage. Then that goes to the next stage, and they've got another few fields that they need to focus on. Not path. Path is just ugly. I will not have path in my orgs. Sorry, I'm saying a lot of things that I will not have. It's just like, and then I better build something that actually works for my clients or users that they need.
Oh, come on. Show a bit of love for that chevrons and the visualization of a process.
No, second thing I do, I take path out. First thing I do is put details to the front tab.
Oh my God, you're going to hate me. That's the thing that I show so often in demos, because I know that business people like the visualization of a process and process step and step coaching and all that stuff. And it opens their hearts. Not necessarily that I say that it's a good means. I wanted to ask what your opinions are on if Path really coaches people through filling fields or so. I have no experience if people really use it.
It's great for a demo, and it's great for getting people into the process. But day to day, when people are really used to the process, it's just slowing them down.
Yeah, you're so destroying me.
Well, I'm not sure I totally agree there, because I think it really depends on the customer. Like one of my customers, they just with the volume of people using this process, 9 out of 10 times there's like weeks or months in between them logging into this particular part of Salesforce, like opportunity management, and they need the really hand-holding. Sometimes I think we've gone a bit too far in this project, but there are indeed these all the details in the path, and there's links to manuals on how to do it, which of course we've saved somewhere else. There's other ways of doing this, but I've seen path being very successful in some organizations and processes.
Yeah, and that you've just hit the nail on the head. It's really about the users and what they need. And you really just got to understand the users and understand what they need. And that is exactly the case where Path and lots of links out to help manuals really does help when they're not using it often, but they need to get the quality high. But when they're doing 30, 40, 50 cases or opportunities or contracts per day, and that's their job, and they're in Salesforce all day long, every day, we just need to give them ways to just get the data in there quickly in a consistent way that is, going to be good for reporting, good for the end result, because the end result may not be just reporting. The end result may be an integration with an external system. The end result may be a contract document that is done by DocGen. What are the other end results? So it's not about, I don't care what data is you're putting in the system. I care what do you do with that data? What's the meaning of that data? What's the reason for that data? And even if things go into an external system, do you need every single field because that external system has got all these fields? Do you need to transmit every single field across the wire? And then into a third system like I've got in one of my orgs. And no, I was a bit sort of naive in the first place when we set it up and we just mapped everything. No, we don't need all of that data going across to other systems. It's just the extra holes in your security where you're taking data out and putting it into other systems where you don't need that data. So, think about where that data is going, how that data is going to be used. Sorry, Ines.
I think.
Sorry, I feel like we can probably start filling out two things. One is what influences data quality, and the other one tools. So we talked about who's going to be consuming the data, where the data comes from as well, what is going to be used for, how often. I think there is something about recency as well, and how often something is used, volumes. What else?
And your data archival, that's part of your data governance. So how long should data stay around for? We've just had big issues in Australia where government is mandated that data is held for extremely long periods of time, and data was breached, and people who hadn't used that service for 10 years or more had their data breached. But that's not okay unless you've got government mandates to keep that data. It's not okay to keep the data for that long if they haven't been a customer for that long. So and you've got to follow rules like GDPR and things like that. But as part of your whole data stewardship, you've got to have an archival and disposal strategy also. You don't just hoard data and keep it there and have it sitting there for years on end. Come on, someone else must have a thought about that.
Yeah, no, true. Also, that's also I wrote this one down. Like is security part of the data quality, and indeed has to do with the archiving and all that. My experience, all data for some reason doesn't get isn't as secure as possible because people forget it's there, it's somewhere. But one thing actually from the past few minutes also realized is quite often when we talk about data quality, and maybe that's only me, we of course talk about the input and not really so much about the processing, but then the output. 9 out of 10 times we then straight away talk about the reporting. But indeed, what I heard today is that, yeah, but what about the day-to-day work? For instance, in a support center, 9 out of 10 times is there's people working on tickets with the team, same on opportunities and the teams. You need the data. You need to use the data before it gets reported on, and I think that's maybe something. We don't touch on often enough.
Yeah, I was just reading Matt Bertuzzi's book from many years ago for Lightning Sales Ops today, and it's had a very good point in it, and it was just around that you can't do reporting in Salesforce without having a reason. Like you got to have an action out of that report. There's no much point doing a report that just shows you the data. You've got to do a report that has what is the action you're going to take from that? What is the thing that you have learnt from running this report what is your next step? So I think that's a really good thing about building reports. And reports are really hard to build in Salesforce, and people so often get them wrong. Using the wrong report type, or the wrong combination of objects in the report type in the wrong way. So I don't let my clients build a lot of reports. We've got one client who builds them, and she gets me to check them. I said, no, you've got the wrong report type. You've got to start again. So it's just it's so annoying to get the wrong information out of a report. So I will mostly just build the reports myself. And I just only want to have key reports, or put them on dashboards, have key dashboards, that show you something. I thought that was just a really good message. Don't build a report for the sake of building a report.
Yeah.
Okay, but isn't that something we teach anyway around in the Salesforce things? Like we said, well, be sparse on data for various reasons. Also because it makes our job in maintaining data easier. And also because we want data in Salesforce, it's expensive, data in Salesforce is expensive, to be actionable. And every report should have an action. I was thinking about the traditional KPI reports. And the usual action on that is make them better, like have better results in the KPI reports, have them raised by 0.5%, or add 200 units to that KPI to make the yearly goal. So isn't that usually the case that our dashboards indicate actions or at least improvements. And
But what are you
sometimes
gonna
a
do with
dashboard
that?
should only tell me, a dashboard should sometimes only tell me everything is okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't need to take any action.
yeah.
So basically not seeing that no action needs to be taken is also an allowed action, which somehow refuses the purpose.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
that's where exception reports are
Yeah.
very, very useful.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I always try to work with my clients in starting with, well, what do you report to your board? Because what's important to them? And then working back to say, well, what data do we need to be able to give you those reports that you report to your board? Yeah, and most of the time you find that's in Excel somewhere, and we need to bring that Excel data into Salesforce and make that a bit more structured in that way. So yeah, it's board reporting is really key, and how do you build those reports that they can. I don't want reports. I do not want people to run reports. I don't want people to subscribe to reports every day. I want there to be an ongoing level of reporting, not reports. No, don't click a button to run a report. I want the reporting to be there. So with that, as close as we can get to that in the Salesforce is to click refresh on the dashboard, or use an external third-party tool. I love just getting data out into Excel, and using enabler for Excel to get data out, and then building Excel graphs, or Power BI graphs or something like that. You can do, or put them into Tableau and build Tableau graphs, and have it refreshed that way, or put Tableau back into your org, linked into your org. I have never used CRM analytics, by the way, so I'm looking at just other tools that are cheap and easy, that you can just get the data out, visualize it in a way you want, and then show it back into the org.
Mhm.
And with the data and reports, you see, how much, what's the volume of the data? Have you ever run into a problem where when you try to report, but the data volume is just too big, the reports become just unusable?
Yeah.
So I've seen it a few times, and sorry, Anna,
I was going to say, and that's usually when yes, it's end users not filtering correctly. They think they want everything, but actually they only want yesterday or something like that. And what I've also found when you let end users loose is that they'll do things like they'll edit the core report, and they'll hard code a date range, for example.
Yeah.
And then so they every day it has the same results.
Yeah.
Never hard coded, a week ago.
See,
or,
there's just as a side note, but there's one technical measure you can take to avoid such issues with core reports, and that is a very, very seldomly used development feature in Apex. You can freaking test reports. You can write Apex tests for reports.
Wow.
Yes, you can. So in the end of the day, you will obviously fill it with fake data, but a wrong filter. And yes, it's hard-coded IDs and stuff like that in your test code, but that's the way it is with reports. But you could test for that.
Wow.
So you could make sure that certain core reports work and don't get messed up.
Crazy shit.
You're going to
That's
write
brilliant.
for that, please, Szandor?
Yeah. And give us the link for the notes
Yeah.
on this episode.
Yes, I will start
App
Googling.
exchange.
I got my ass beaten when I said focus on building logic in low-code tools and then use your Apex time to write test code for that. And I got smashed for that. If I now move out and say write unit tests for your reports,
absolutely. I said it's a seldom used feature, but if you come from what we just heard, from the stories we just
absolutely.
heard.
Absolutely.
So I mean that's literally money, or at least reporting to some board or to some financial institute. These are my numbers, and then the numbers are totally whack because somebody messed with 2 filters or something similar. Of course, I want to invest the 2 hours, 3 hours of development time, and boil that test and make sure it runs regularly so I can sleep right. I mean, that's the whole point. I want to sleep tight and like a baby and not be scared by a call because somebody messed up a Dange range.
Well, I have another really cool tip for data quality around integrations. How often have you got into an org and deleted this random field that you just think is not used, and then 3 days later you find it's used in an integration? Well, stick all of the fields that are used in your integration into a custom metadata type with a lookup to the field in the custom metadata type and call that custom metadata type integration, and link all of those fields into that integration that's documenting that integration basically, and then you cannot delete those fields because it says it's related to this custom metadata type that you can't, it's going to stop you deleting those fields.
Yeah. Would it work if you keep it in a field set? Because a field set is more closer to the, so you can delete a field that it's used in a field set.
I haven't tried that, but I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah. Yeah, because that would be my first idea would have been create a field set, said this is the SAP integration. Nice, you have it on the object, or it's in there. But if you can delete a field,
metadata type is you can then document it also. You can add additional like things that relate only to that integration. Additional fields or additional data. So it's a fully self-documenting way of doing it also. Yeah.
Which is a pretty neat approach, right?
I should have known that for one of my previous projects. So that's where I saw also on the topic of volume and what influences the data quality, for instance, batch jobs and integrations. So there was Salesforce, and then on one side there was the ERP system, and on the other side there was a marketing system, and then there was the web shop on top. And the web shop, every transaction there, and all the also from website, all the leads generated by download of like a white paper or PDF, everything went to the ERP system that then got matched into Salesforce, and these were thousands a day. And then everything was put into the marketing system. Now, because reports and list views were just not moving anymore because it's just the volume, what we decided, and also I think there was a team of 12 salespeople who had to deal with all these leads and opportunities. Well, if you have thousands a day, they're never going to get followed up. So we also created a batch that would then delete. Like of course with certain criteria, but would delete about the same volume every day on opportunities and leads. And then also, of course, because of the integrations, have a job that would then tell the marketing system or the marketing platform to also delete them there. It worked. In the end, the reports worked, but you just have, if you ask me, bogus data that makes your reports useless.
Okay, I think to finish up, we need to talk about what do you wish companies and users would do to improve data quality? For me, it is learning reports, learning the intricacies of Salesforce reports, what the report types is. Yeah, you're going to have to learn what a left outer join is, even though Salesforce doesn't call it that, but that's what it is. You're going to have to learn that. the with and without reports, they're really hard to learn. But when to create a custom report type, when to not create a custom report type, how much to customize your report types. Like, don't change all your field names. That just confuses people. You can, but it's not a good idea. But just to not save the reports with hard-coded date ranges. To have reports that are linked from the records. Like, never build a campaign report more than once. Build a campaign report and link it to the campaign record, and just you click on that link and it runs it passes in the filter values into the reports. So that's, for me, what I would absolutely love people to learn more about. Over to you.
Not hoarding data is probably the most important thing on the field level, on the role level. I see. I have to talk to so many people and companies that want to have hundreds and thousands of fields, overly specific, only used in one step of a process and never to be touched again. Want to migrate in hundreds of thousands of rows, not knowing that the business is going to create hundreds and thousands of rows every month. So reducing the volume of data, reducing the number of data points would be number one for me, and trimming it down to the things that you really need for your activities in Salesforce. It might be large. I have customers with 21 million cases per year. So what is just enough, or a lean body of data, could vary from case to case, and it could be millions even. But always go for a lean approach in terms of fields and in terms of rows, which gives you well, we heard all the vocabulary, actionable data, stuff that is used, input and output, stuff that notifies you about exceptions in your workflow. Managed by exception is probably the only way to hold or get grip on a large business. So only having meaningful data somewhere is overly important. And the barbecue party should be the North Star of managing data, because it should be fun and it should be meaningful for teams to actually care for their data. Not, I mean, it could be a cocktail party as well or whatever, but it's there should be that kind of item that is navigating your data quality concept.
One thing that makes me super nervous is production data in sandboxes.
Hey, yes.
It's common. Well, I mean, clearly, if you've got either a full or a partial sandbox, you're inheriting production data without any masking, and sometimes I find that companies are not quite aware of the risk that they're bringing. You know, that they've got production data in a sandbox, so you know that brings its own issues, and you know clearly there are data masking options that go with that, but that needs to be a decent policy as to how you do it.
It also needs to be decent cost from Salesforce. 10% of your licensing spend for data masking is just excessive in any org.
Just as a German anecdote, doesn't fulfill legal requirements because the data is masked after it has been copied to the sandbox, not before.
Right.
So I'm legally required to ask the customer if the personal data is allowed to be used for testing purposes.
Indeed.
This is an opt-in for us over here. So no, I cannot use Salesforce own product data masking because it just doesn't cut the cut no matter the cost. For me, so what I think we'll learn again is data means work, and more data means more work. Which brings me back to the data steward, or that one person or persons or that group of persons that think about the data needs on their company, which might not only be Salesforce, but Salesforce plus X and Salesforce plus Y. So it comes back to me, please, appoint someone who has a little bit of time, because don't stress those data people out. They need to analyze, they need to crunch, they need to clean up, they need to do it repeatedly, they need to talk to people. So if you have anyone who's eager to do that, awesome, because if you want to try to find someone who's capable of doing that, that person will need to understand your business first, which will also take time. And messy data is the least thing we want to have.
And to add on to that, the data steward does not mean it's a data entry person. Usually those two work together. But yeah, I think with what companies should do is realize the value of their data. Without the data, especially when you're talking about customer data, the company has like no reason to exist. Is a better word for that. But I think a lot of them don't realize that, like, this is, besides the people that we have with the skills and the knowledge, the data in the systems is what makes the company and its value. See, Ines, you've been quiet.
Yeah.
You have any last
All right.
remarks?
My last remark would be, one thing that I would like to see more to improve on that is, okay, one of the things that we've been talking about is constraints, right? So when you're trying to improve or change a system, one of the things that you can infuse is constraints. For example, the amount of you consume or those validation rules, so things like that, right? You can move, you constrain it. Maybe necessary as a starting point to put constraints in place. But what makes bigger difference is to start infusing feedback loops or reduce that feedback delay. Maybe the barbecue is one way to do it. You can have a barbecue every day. So how can you delay the feedback loops, and how can you present it to whoever's going to consume that data so that you can learn if you're getting closer where you want to be or not? Without learning, we're just going backward. And yeah, I see this a lot in organizations where we can put tons of things in place, but unless we look back, is this helping? And, you know, in the way that we consume things at home, the ability to see how much electricity you use or how much water, that makes a big difference of how you behave. So you want to change behaviors and system perspective, look at also feedback loops. That's what I will ask.
Can I just put in one bonus point? I put it at the bottom of the document. If you can scroll down for us, please, Andre. So I've been a part of this open source commons community sprint where we've built an indicators component, but we've been talking about exceptions all the way through here. And our next thing is called an exceptions grid. And so I built it for data integration purposes. So I've got all of the fields that are required to have the integration and all the meaning behind those integrations. And what it does is, as you get the data quality right, all the exceptions are removed from the exceptions grid. So it says, okay, you must have a first name entered, you must have a last name entered. Because this is on the contract that is produced by this document, it is important for legal reasons. First name, last name is not a good example for mononyms, but that's the whole idea, is to give them the reason for that data to exist, give them the reason why that data is meant to be filled in. And as soon as they fill it in an appropriate way, you can use formulas to determine this. This comes away from the exception grid. So the exception grid gets smaller and smaller and smaller as soon as they start filling their data and they've got it. So those final like 3 or 4 fields that they keep forgetting to fill in before they hit the button to go to produce the document or send it to the integration, they will be there as an alert to say, hey, it's not a validation rule to say stop, you need to do something that gets into garbage data. It's going to say, hey, you might have an error in your integration if you do this, or your contract document might not be complete if you do this. So there's some sample code there, and Szandor did help as part of this code. But it's a community sprint, and the next community sprint is in January in the UK. So we're not doing this one in that sprint, but come along to do the sprint anyway. But come and help us. The wiki's there, the code's there. Come and help us actually build this component out. That'd be really cool.
So thanks
That
everyone
sounds
for
awesome.
listening today. Right. Let's cut it up. Let's wrap it up. Sorry, I don't want to cut anyone. Let's wrap it up here. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed our rhapsodic thoughts on data quality and data stewardship. I know that Andre did amazing talks on the topic. So if you want a stringent storyline, look for one of his previous talks on the topic on French Touch and You're Dreaming, I believe, and a few more. Andre is also the talk-to guy too, if you have questions around data stewardship. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.